Welcome everybody to our second to last Oceanside chat for the Viterbi Startup Garage. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, VSG is an incubator for USC Viterbi School of Engineering. We're in Marina del Rey. We serve a community of early stage tech startups for a whole year. We take about 6 teams per cycle, and we do a cycle in the fall and a cycle in the spring. We actually just onboarded our fall teams, who I'm hoping are all populating in here. And so if you're interested at all in the garage and what we do, by all means, visit our website. I'll drop a lot of links into the chat today. For the purposes of today's Oceanside chat, we are going to be covering design strategy and startups for founders. And our speaker today is Robbie Nock. He's a new Oceanside chat speaker. So one of the things I like to say on camera is that we hope to see you again, Robbie. So I'm gonna hook you now. Robbie's the Associate Vice President of Entrepreneurship and Professional Practice at the Art Center College of Design. He is a seasoned expert in helping startups and early stage teams unlock transformative potential of design, not just the aesthetic tools, but also customer discovery, prototyping, and achieving product market fit, which if you are a startup founder, that's the battle. With a unique background that spans photography, digital technology, and startups in academia, his work is, obviously very useful for teams. He also serves on the Caltech Entrepreneurs Forum Executive Committee, and he's on the board of directors for Pasadena. I think I covered most of it, Robbie, but I'm going to pass you the mic. First, I'm going to say thank you for joining us, and then I'm going to pass you the mic, and you can add more color to your bio. But we're just super thrilled to have you join us today.
Thank you so much, and it's great to be here with everybody. Glad to see a good crew showing up. I love a full Zoom screen, and we're going to jump right into it. I will share a little bit more about my background and perspective through this presentation, and I think it will contextualize a lot of what I'm sharing with you today. So let me share my screen and do this correctly, because there's always a little art to it. Okay, and then we do this here. Push play. And that should be what you need to see. Does that look correct?
Yep, looks really good.
All right, great. So jumping right into the presentation, this is going to be an overview of design strategy for startup founders. And I'm going to take you through a range of topics and ultimately hope that you leave with a better understanding of why design is a critical part of your path. Let's see here if I can use the advanced button. Great. So give you a quick agenda of the deck. We'll go through my background and a little bit of introduction. I will address an expanded definition of design and help you see design in a new way. We'll do an overview of design disciplines. I'll talk about a couple of case studies. We'll dive into a little bit around segmentation and brand identity, and particularly how those are critical for your validation and product market fit efforts. And then we'll, if we have time, talk a little bit about the different pathways that startups from different sectors and industries will take, and how the role of design applies to those different paths. But before I jump fully in, as you're thinking about this, I'd love for you to just plop into the chat, and you don't have to just put in your value proposition or anything, but if you're a product, a service, B2B, B2C, software, hardware, nonprofit, just what type of venture are you? And I'll track that as I go through my presentation and kind of give you contextual examples based on the array of choices. So as introduced, my name is Robbie Nock. I just recently was promoted to the Vice President of Alumni and Industry Engagement position. That'll be working taking a lot of the work that I've been doing in the classroom and with our students and pointing that to our alumni and industry partners. Art Center is, which I'll share a little bit more about, is uniquely positioned in its role in industry. And we do a lot of work with startups and Fortune 100 companies in developing concepts and intellectual property. In my past role, I was the Associate Vice President of Entrepreneurship and Professional Practice and an assistant professor in a range of academic departments. And my purpose was really to focus on training artists and designers to succeed as entrepreneurs and founders across the whole spectrum of possible business models, from small to medium to scalable technology to partnerships and other potential. And that work has been, over the course of the last 11 years, I've been at the college and started my career really as an entrepreneur, working in photography and new media, doing a lot of work in immersive experience design and music and entertainment. That took me from University of Edinburgh to London, undergrad at Edinburgh to London, to Los Angeles, to internationally. And in my graduate school, I started a company, which was a map sharing platform, and it needed venture capital. And I actually didn't really understand at the time exactly the formula that I needed to put in place to get attention and support from VC. So I spent a lot of time figuring that out. And ultimately, my efforts led me to teaching that approach and helping both my alma mater, Cal Arts, as well as Art Center, really build their entrepreneurial offerings. So Art Center, I don't know how many of you are familiar with our college. We're a private, nonprofit, nearly 100-year-old institution based in Pasadena. We are very much integrated across art and design disciplines. So we offer both bachelor's and master's of art and bachelor's and master's of science, as well as some online degrees and non-degree programs. Where, as I mentioned, we're very much connected with industry and do a lot of work integrating industry research into our educational experience. So companies like Google or Ford or Microsoft or GM or Adobe will work with students and faculty on projects where IP is developed and ultimately utilized by those companies. So that's the overview of myself, Art Center. And now we're going to get into the content, really. And I want to start with a thought experiment for you all. I'd like to ask you to, and this isn't something you have to share, I'd like to ask you to think of something that you believe to be exceptionally well designed. And think of the reasons why. Something could be anything. And hold that in your mind. So whatever it is, think of why you think it is well designed. Now, you've probably had enough time to digest that. I'm here to help expand that definition for you and help really push you to think about design in a new way. Oftentimes, design is perceived to be an aesthetic outcome, a color choice, a logo, a font, a type, shape, form. But really, from my perspective, design is about outcomes. It's about solving problems, focusing on outcomes. So the design of a fork is really about the outcome of eating. It may have an aesthetic form and function and shape, but really the purpose of it is to move food into your mouth. Car, similar thing. The purpose is travel. And phone, although phones are for a wide array of things these days, it's really centered on communication. And this brings up a really important distinction: the difference between design as a noun and design as a verb. And this is what's really important for startups to understand. The design of something is very different than the act of designing it. So designers produce designed outcomes, but they also facilitate the process of creating that, whatever that might be. So it's a two-way street. And for a startup, this really impacts both how you understand your customer as well as how you deliver value to them. And you'll see in how we explore this that this is part of what startups often overlook. Startups often misunderstand design, and therefore they don't value it, they underestimate it, they underutilize it. They do not build design into the founding team. They do not think that design happens consistently and continuously. They think of it as a one-off, a package, a finish, a landing page, not the act of creating those and facilitating that outcome. And it's important to note that design activities change over the course of a life cycle of a venture. So what you need to do at a very early phase radically shifts as you grow and scale, depending on the type of structure and market you're entering into. Mostly people are familiar with the triad between business, technology, and design, the triad that ultimately represents affordability, feasibility, and desirability. But the desirability factor often people feel is a little bit of a sort of a vague art. And I'm here to tell you that it is nothing but vague, and it is in fact very, very hard in its edges. So what I'm driving at here is that desirability is ultimately the key way in which understand the human relationships with a new product, a new technology, a new service, a new business. Desirability is what drives behavior. Functionality and cost are critically important, but startups that only focus on technology and cost often miss the mark in terms of product market fit because they think technology speaks for itself. So design really is the vehicle in which you
meet.
right? Raul, we have you on the audio here. Okay, maybe you're muted now. Great. So design is really the area in which you understand your customer, and it's really that vehicle through which you interpret and shift and iterate. And it is important that you focus and understand on that. It's not necessarily the case that you need a designer to do this for you. You may be able to learn and do a lot of this entrepreneurially on your own, but it becomes more and more important as you grow. Traditionally, startups think about developing a solution and offering that to a customer or client. And they feel that that solution speaks for itself. And oftentimes it does, but startups have a high percentage of failure. So relying just on a solution and a functionality and a set of features or benefits doesn't necessarily get you to the finish line. So I like to expand the view of what a design team does for a traditional startup group of founders. Design is, as we talked about, a two-way street. It's the communication of value and solutions to your customer through various outputs. That could be a deck, it could be a landing page, it could be a prototype or an MVP, could be a finished product shipped to market. But importantly, design also creates the vehicle in which you bring knowledge back to the company, in which you understand behavior and patterns and the unique nature of the relationship between your perceived customer and the reality of what they actually do with your product. And if you can't tune that two-way street, you're going to get stuck and you're going to build something with too much cost and too little ability to pivot. And that's the dead end for so many teams. And my mission here is to help more startups succeed. And I do believe that this is one of the ways that you can gain an advantage. So the important thing about this nimble nature of output is that designers can work across a range of deliverables, and they can figure out the right thing to deliver at the right time. And anything that your company puts out ultimately reflects your mission, vision, and values. It could be a survey or a sign-up page, or even going and talking to somebody in person and asking them a set of questions in a customer discovery or interview context. All of that can be intentional and can be controlled and can be dialed to get better input. And that input, that data back, is gold. That is the thing that allows you to iterate and pivot and meet the real need that you're solving for. So in this light, design is really the foundation of the lean method. Startups almost always understand the importance of the lean approach, but what they don't always realize is that everything you test, every time you put something in front of a potential customer or stakeholder or user, that reflects both directly and indirectly the company's efforts. And intentionality creates much more coherence with that feedback, the learning part of the cycle, so that you build the right next thing and you don't build it unnecessarily large or with too much cost, that you build the right next deliverable. And that you hopefully can do that activity without the need for a huge amount of upfront investment, because that is really the engine that will be with your company for the entire journey. And if you tune that engine correctly, you're going to have essentially a superpower. Companies spend huge amounts of money once they've scaled, once they've gone to acquisition or IPO, to be able to understand their customer. And if you build that in from the ground up, you're going to be so much more appealing if you're en route to that type of an outcome. So everybody knows about sticky notes, right? And it's oftentimes designers and design thinking are kind of pushed into an area of, oh, that's where the sticky notes and the kind of group facilitated dialogues happen. But really, the secret power of sticky notes is that they're flexible, that they adapt, that they don't stay on the wall, that you have to address the fluid nature of an idea that is evolving and is not fixed. Getting to the light bulb takes a lot of sticky notes. Everybody focuses on the light bulb, but really the art is in the approach to getting there and being intentional about that. So to summarize this part of the presentation, it's important to understand that prototyping and iterative discovery for product market fit are really the wheelhouse of design. That prototyping and iterating at a low cost is very difficult to do if you have to outsource that activity, if you don't have that built in. And it's very difficult to start a company with product market fit from the get-go. Also, the way in which your company is structured, the way in which it actually manages the tasks to achieve that product market fit, is a product of design. The flow of information, the systems that you create to be able to capture, assess, and validate insights. Who makes those decisions? Who's understanding how the pieces come together when you're working in a rapidly evolving and very constrained environment? Designers bring that to the table. Branding, packaging, and marketing, people are well aware that those are the domains of design, but that activity shifts over the course of your iterative development. So hiring somebody to design a website or an enclosure for the first version of your technology solution isn't just the only time you're going to need that activity. It's something that's going to happen frequently and often, and being able to evolve accordingly is incredibly important. Understanding how to navigate supply chain and logistics, really in the behind the scenes structure and systems of what you're building, is also a domain of design. And then finally, once you've established traction, validation, product market fit, you're not set forever. You have to continue to retain insights from your customers, to continue to make sure that you're not losing people, that you're not spending too much time in one particular area and missing the evolution that you're undergoing. So the big takeaway here is that design is continuous. It provides the foundation for strategic iteration, and the requirements change over time. And they are far beyond the superficial aesthetics of what somebody sees of the company. So we'll go through a very quick overview of how I like to separate the design domains. And each of them has richness and breadth, and we could spend a lot of time in each area. So that won't be what we do today. But I like to break it down into 4 categories: communication design, industrial design, interaction design, and then design for research and prototyping. Communication design, well understood: branding, identity, graphics, the creative direction, the visual representation, marketing materials, one-sheeters, flyers, survey, collateral, websites, digital, social, photography, and content. And those areas are really the place that people start and are essential for every startup to be able to communicate iteratively on the value that you provide. Again, hiring somebody, outsourcing something once is a big weakness because it's likely to shift and evolve. Industrial design, the second of the main domains, is really focused on the physical world: hardware, manufacturing, the supply chain, and the components and the parts that come together to produce a functional piece of technology or a product or a software or service. Rendering, packaging, systems thinking, all of those are the domain of industrial design. And not always the case that a lot of digital startups don't need all of that baked in, but industrial designers are incredibly nimble and can cover some of the communication and interaction components because they're thinking about the entire design system. Interaction design is really the front end UX, UI, the human computer interaction. Again, connecting to communication design, often connecting to industrial design, but really looking at the way in which we integrate and interact with technology. So AI and ML, robotics, the world around mixed reality, virtual reality, augmented reality, and importantly, game engines, which are becoming even more and more useful tools for startups, particularly in scenario and prototype building complex systems. Design research, ultimately the activity that people typically think of as design thinking, but extends beyond just a facilitated conversation with a group of experts and stakeholders. It's really a way of synthesizing and inputting information back into the company. Those tools are highly prized amongst the Fortune 100 and often a little bit hard for startups that don't have designers to manage. And then lastly, design for prototyping. And this is really, again, could come from a spectrum of communication, industrial, or interaction design, but it's about getting data back into the company. It's about quick and high fidelity information. So the tools that people use to do this vary, and there's lots of great insights that you can learn and bring these into your prototyping process and ultimately in your development of an MVP, particularly for those that are early stage. So as I mentioned, the Fortune 100 definitely understands this. And in 2018, McKinsey put out a report on the business value of design. And this is really looking at well-established companies. And the companies that excel at design grow revenues and shareholders' returns at nearly twice the rate of their peers. This is well known. This is a McKinsey study. This is now nearly 8 years ago, 7 years ago. Why is it so hard for startups to bring that into their thinking? And it often comes down to a question of resources and to a question around ownership, equity, and competition for value. Startups are trained to control and retain as much value as possible for as long as possible to be able to create those outsized returns that investors are looking for. And it often undermines their ability to get going in the first place. The number of times startups have come to me and said, hey, Robbie, we really need some help, but we don't have any budget. Can we get a student to do this for free? The answer is maybe, but you're thinking about it the wrong way if you're not prioritizing this activity as part of your foundation and your core. So I'd invite you to read this study. It's not particularly new, but it does give you a sense of how McKinsey measured that and some of the ways in which companies manage that design activity and how it's integrated or controlled within a corporate structure. So now I just give you a couple case examples of companies that have done this really well across a spectrum of industries and company types. One that I really love from this perspective is Patagonia. Yvon Chouinard was a designer, even if not trained as such. Started the company by thinking about the human experience of climbing. And his first product was a piece of hardware to be able to hang ropes on cliff faces, piton. That approach to understanding and valuing their customers' behavior, desires, needs, and goals has informed the entire growth of that company. And Patagonia continues to be one of the most groundbreaking businesses out there because it takes risks in ways that for a lot of businesses would seem a little scary. But it knows that its customers, it knows so well who it's serving that it doesn't have a fear that these efforts will fail. I mean, we could go on and on about Patagonia. Very much a great example of a company that's built with a design approach from the ground up. Disney, similarly, brilliant in this effort, understanding why people want to be entertained and what those stories and characters and experiences at a very human level need to be in order to be able to build the empire that has come to be today. You could think about it as entertainment and as storytelling, but what's much deeper is that understanding of customer and understanding of behavior and going back to design being a two-way street. All of that information about interest and reception and attention is driving the evolution of the company. Many are familiar with Nest. Nest was founded by two ex-Apple employees, Tony Fadell and Matthew Rogers. This is a perfect example of a company that led with design. The traditional Honeywell thermostat many still people have those, paled in comparison to the experience and seamless integration of a new device, a new bit of hardware to control temperature and environmental, HVAC systems and so forth. This is a company that was deeply trained in this art by Apple, which is, you could put them on the list as also, like Disney and Patagonia, very much leading the way. Many are familiar with Airbnb, founded by designers from RISD, Brian Chesky as the person that people are most familiar with. And again, this is a company that iterated at a very low cost with very strategic insights from understanding behavior and ultimately built a disruptor in the hotel and real estate business that typically people wouldn't expect coming from a design approach. And then last two examples here, one that we're very fond of at Art Center, Liquid Death, which was founded by one of our alumni, Mike Cesario. This is a company that understood the dynamics of the experience of purchasing water. And it knew how to utilize the levers of aesthetics, packaging, environment to be able to completely transform the expectations of bottled water. It has a deep social and environmental mission to reduce waste, but it also is doing something that is playful and joyful and artistic, which people love, and creates that stickiness with the brand and with the product. And that, again, is a component of design and design strategy that's baked into that company. Last example, and I know I'm at my 12:35 mark, so I'll wrap up in probably 5 minutes here. Tesla. Elon hired, again, an Art Center alum, Franz von Holzhausen, very early on in the process of bringing the first vehicle to market. Franz has then been lead design on all of Elon's projects, from SpaceX to the Boring project and so forth. And Elon was wise to know that starting an electric vehicle company needed a nuanced approach, that it wasn't just as simple as saying we have battery propulsion that is able to replace petrol, the combustion engine. It was about packaging that in a vehicle that created desirability and ultimately enabled the platform that Tesla has built that now is, Elon is take him or leave him, incredibly successful and impactful in the world. So I think I may skip a couple of slides here, but the issue comes down at the very start to segmentation and understanding how to communicate and how to dissect and disentangle market segments so that you can get better, richer insights from your beachhead set of customers. Understanding how to tune that segmentation process and test segments in a scientific manner is charged by design. It is something that really increases in value when you bring those two areas together. Companies' visual representation makes a huge difference, especially early on. So it's not something that you can say, oh, we're going to wait until we're, Series A or Series B to think about what we look like. Every investor, every potential employee, every potential customer is getting signals about your seriousness, your skill set as a team, about your capabilities. and your ability to get through that valley of death that is so hard for startups. And the more that you secure their feelings, that you care about what they see and how they see it and how it lives in their life as a early stage prototype or as a first stage MVP or as an iterative development of a product along the way. That visual presentation is everything. And yeah, so understanding how you present your mission, vision, and value is part of that process. And it lives in the DNA of your company. It matters both internally and externally. And you'll see that makes a huge difference for you over the course of your career. And I'm going to end on this slide here, which is addressing that sticky issue that often founders feel like they don't have the budget to pay a designer, or they don't want to bring somebody on board as a partner or equity owner. And they look at the short term and they think about the runway and the cost, but they don't realize that if they bring that to bear and invest at an early stage in that capability, they're going to radically lower the cost over time. And there's nothing that kills startups more than too much complexity and the wrong offering. So in conclusion, is that not giving me my, okay, here we go. Design radically reduces risks by reducing the cost to iterate. Design enhances quality of data input from customer discovery and market validation efforts. Design centers customers and investors rather than technology and functionality. And importantly, design requires upfront investment and is not something that happens in a vacuum. And I will leave it there for questions. Thank you all.
Thank you. We have a few questions in the chat. So I'm just going to ask quickly. Lynn, would you be comfortable asking your question out loud, or I can just ask it for you? I mean, I guess you answering that would be out loud. I'll give you a few seconds, Lynn, if you want to ask. Otherwise, I'm asking it for you. Okay, jumping in. Lynn says, would you like to show us an example of a well-designed website? And maybe instead of showing us, maybe you can like think on whether, maybe in passing a website that you felt very, moved or inspired or, fits within the framework of what we just talked about.
Yeah, I think a company, which has USC roots, called Relativity Space, is a great example. And it both shows the big vision, but also enables you to understand the various components of how that system works, how their factory of the future connects to their rocket manufacturing, connects to their vision for future space exploration, printing, rockets in space.
So Robbie,
sure.
Hey, Robbie, it's Dave Eastman. Just to let everybody know, Relativity Space, we're proud to say, is a Viterbi venture fund investment. And the co-founders, Jordan Noon and Tim Ellis, are both Viterbi grads. And in fact, Jordan is a mentor at the garage on occasion. So we're
Nice.
Relativity. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, they're a phenomenal example. And there are myriad more, but good one, and great, Dave. That's awesome. Hopefully there'll be philanthropic donors in the future.
We're working on it.
Barbara from one of our teams at the garage has some questions. Barbara, I noticed that you came on camera. I really appreciate that. Take it away.
Okay, I was listening the whole time, I promise. Yeah, so basically I have two questions. One, should a designer have previous experience in the space in which you are functioning? So for example, we're an ed tech company, we're not a healthcare company. So should the designer be familiar, A, with that space, and B, how do you know if you actually, if your site and your work is actually working design wise? How is it, who's out there who could evaluate and say it could be better if, that kind of approach? So the two questions, should they be industry specific? And then how do you evaluate what you already have?
Yeah, so I think industry specific is less important than skill set for your immediate need. And designers are really good at addressing unknowns. So moving from one domain to the next and bringing a set of skills that allow for you to communicate or develop a product or a website or whatever it might be. And especially in an early stage, you want somebody that's flexible with working in the unknown, because ideally you're looking to hire somebody that can grow with you, who doesn't have a huge amount of experience. And it's really about what is their approach to the output, not the content itself. And that as the kind of technical founder, I'm assuming, or the person with the insight, is what you're going to guide them in. And then they're going to help package that for you in whatever industry or market that you're going into. And then, yeah, so with regards to, is it working or not? Does it resonate? Is it effective? There are a lot of ways to address that. Getting experts to give you expert advice is one way, but oftentimes talking to a spectrum of people and tracking, without giving them a lot of knowledge of what you're trying to do, tracking how they respond. And actually, I skipped a bunch of slides for the sake of time, but there's two great books that will help you test and validate whether, say, a website or a logo is working the way you want it to. And they're called Talking to Humans and Testing with Humans, both by Giff Constable and with forward by the fellow Frank Rimolowski, who runs the NYU startup ecosystem. They're really, really effective at that. People often will do A/B testing to say, okay, well, what if we do it like this? How do people respond? If we do it this way, is it different? And you want to not give too much upfront guidance to say, oh, we're looking for you to give us feedback on the color or the logo, but like a deeper sense of, do they understand what we're trying to do here, without you having to tell them.
Great. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Rahul has a question. You there, Rahul? I can ask in his stead. In the context of deep tech, AI models, etc., what does design mean? For example, what could design mean for ChatGPT style products, say for robotics? There is a question of product market fit, but can design help answer that? Oh, and then he put that he can't read it out.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you, Raul. And yes, so there is, particularly with AI and ML, there's the interaction between the human or individual with the system, and then there's the interaction between systems that don't have a human component to them. So you're looking at a nuanced understanding of how human computer interaction works, and then how computer interaction works. And designers trained in UX, UI, and robotics understand those three gateways. And it's really all about data. It's about how are systems communicating to each other independently of a human, actor or participant, and then how are those systems outputting actionable information. And something that I would say actually is, and another example of a great landing page is ChatGPT's prompt system. And the way in which you engage with the prompt, even if it's just a little text box, is all about the context of where that is presented to you and what the expectations are of your interaction with that interface to a machine-led system. We do a lot of work at the college in our immersion lab around robotics and sensor systems and new technology, and understanding the way in which data informs a human outcome is paramount there. I don't know if that truly answers your question, but yes.
A quick question from Jasmine about the slides being shared. Would you be able to share the slides? Robbie, not to put you on the spot.
I think I could share the slides. Yeah, that's fine. I'll send them to you afterwards.
Perfect. I'll
Thank
add
you,
them.
Robbie.
Just keep them confidential to yourself, please.
Absolutely.
And then Gilda has a question about cost variable. Gilda, are you there?
Let me unmute here. Hi there. Thank you for the presentation. So I'm sold, definitely need a designer. I'm working in mostly technology platforms, so the look of that, but also perhaps for a physical product that we're investing now for a prototype. And so I'm just wondering, what's the range of costs here and what do you start with? Do you start with a logo and a deck to go get VC funding? Do you start with the prototype? What's the range of the costs and in what order should we try to allocate paying for them?
That is a great question and an art in and of itself. So it really depends on the nature of the company and what the end service or product or solution is. But I would say that at the outset, your deck, your landing page, your email signature, your logo are incredibly important. And they're important to show that you're consistent and coherent and that you're treating that early audience that you're seeking to engage with the highest respect possible. So, hourly rates from $50 to $500 an hour, depending on the maturity of the designer. I mean, you could pay even more than that if you hire somebody who's done this for life. But if you look for graduating students, people with a couple of years of experience, even if they're employed somewhere else, if you find somebody whose aesthetic you think aligns with your vision, they might be likely to work with you as well as whatever else they're doing. And that allows you to test and see if that's a person that you would want to work with more. So I can point you all, we do, I'll pull this up because it's a great tool for everybody. We do every year, every 2 terms, a graduation show. And I'll share that here, which presents the work of our graduating class. And students put their contact information up and some of their projects, and you can see the different disciplines and departments. You can also search by major. So a lot of the work that I've done has been to build our business minor. And you can see that students that have a business expertise and a visual expertise, whether it's in the instance of graphics or industrial design or photography or fashion. And this is a great place to start. And students are looking for people like you to join at an early stage, but expecting like a sort of a 15, minimum wage, $20 an hour fee is not going to get you the best result. And there's services like Fiverr and all these there's offshore and other ways that you can get stuff done at a low cost. But the problem with that is consistency and coherence. I mean, even AI tools, like you can spin up a visual identity using Midjourney and Photoshop, but do you know how to evolve that once you've selected, like, oh, I really love this background image? If your business changes, can you keep that core identity with a new prompt, a new visual language? Is very difficult. So, but yeah, AI is a super useful component these days in that process, and designers are using that as well. So knowing somebody that can do both.
And if you find that you click with someone as a new, with their designs and as a new founder, what would be kind of like, do you have any comments on what an equity stake they would take?
Well, yeah, I think it depends on the valuation or the scope of the potential venture, and how many hours are needed. So oftentimes it's at the outset, you might not need somebody for a huge number of hours, but you might need them over a set of stages. And I would, a percent or 0.5% for somebody at the outset, if it's a large market opportunity, is a great incentive. But a lot of the young people are really looking for cash in hand.
Right.
And that's actually also good for your investors if you can protect that. So it's a bit of a balance.
Robbie,
thank you. Very, very helpful. Thank you.
Just Robbie, a comment on that, just from the venture side of things, in terms of the kind of equity that you would be giving out to a designer. I would look at a designer as essentially a technical consultant in a lot of ways, where you're bringing in for a very specific task. So the first step is negotiating and finding out what are you going to pay that person on, an hourly basis, and then essentially maybe setting an agreed amount of time that's available. So maybe it's 100 hours, maybe it's 200 hours, maybe it's less. It really depends on the task at hand. And then in a sense, you can structure this with your counsel, that you can give an option grant, let's say, or warrants for that amount in either your next round or at a specific valuation, if you already have a valuation that's set. And then you simply have the individual in question earn that amount, where again, they have to agree with you that, yes, the work was satisfactory, et cetera, et cetera. But there's examples out there. It's not too hard to find. But that, rather than kind of setting a fixed percentage of your company, because again, founders have, it's all over the map in terms of what you're going to be giving up. And also, frankly, when you get a slightly more mature company, you might be looking at, let's say, a CFO at 3% of your company, and compare that to somebody who's essentially very important because they've done it at an early stage, to Robbie's point, but they put in a limited number of hours. It's a balance.
Yeah,
agreed, Dave. That's great.
Getting close to time, and we have a few more questions. I want to check in, Robbie. Can you stay after a bit to answer more questions?
I would love to. I have a hard stop. It's not that I have a thing starting right at 1, but I've got to get to our other campus. So we can go like a little bit, couple minutes over, but
I'll go quickly. So I'm going to just ask these questions out loud, and then we have Anon who will ask the last question. So Terry asks, do you have any recommendation case studies that demonstrate efficient strategies to go out finding and defining product market fit?
That was too fast. Say it again.
He's just looking for case studies that demonstrate efficient strategies for finding product market fit from your
OpenAI, most efficient product market fit case study I've ever seen.
Amazing. Jasmine says she has a question about the first step, first hire, seeking technical creative. She's seeking a technical creative co-founder. Any advice on the first steps to that first hire?
Culture and really feeling like you are speaking the same language, that you aren't trying to translate everything you say, that somebody intuitively begins to grasp what your knowledge and systems and thinking are, and that you don't have to keep on saying it the same way or different ways to get them on board. Yeah, culture is everything on that. Like, do you want to spend time together? Do you have the same sense of desire for coffee, or I don't know, could be how you spend your free time.
Yeah, that's good advice.
That's so good. Thank you so much.
Lynn is asking, is the art center in Pasadena?
Yes, Pasadena, California, and we have 2 campuses extending across Pasadena.
And then Anand, your turn. Keep it brief if you can, please.
Thank you. I would love to know is it possible for the Art Center students to take on projects from us and real world mixed with students?
Yes, so for most students, an opportunity to work on a real project with real pet is a great thing to augment their education, and we invite students to do those types of activities alongside internships and other apprenticeship sort of models. So we have a job board that's open, and I'll put that in the chat. And you can post there as an employer. And students tend to expect, a decent fee for their work, but as students, they're not going to be charging the same as what somebody who's recently graduated. And I'll put this in the chat here.
Anand coming in with a practical question. I appreciate that. And then I'll ask a really philosophical question to close us out, which is one thing that wasn't necessarily mentioned in your design strategy, but I know it probably does matter, is like ESG, environmental and social governance, and how that plays a role. I know that, like, when you have a closed loop of feedback and you're not involving sustainability or the environment, we get into where we kind of are today. And I'm just wondering, do you have any suggestions or advice, or even like places people can go to think about how to incorporate more ESG into their design practices? Especially when it comes to things like governance, which is essentially just knowing how to make changes and decisions that are good rather than good for business.
Right. Well, so designers have a real superpower on that front, which is understanding the life cycle of a product or idea from cradle to grave, so to speak, and being able to be very expansive and imaginative in thinking about the consequences or outcomes that might be future or current risks and what those could entail over the long run. So if a designer is simply just solving a problem without context, like you say, you hire somebody to put together a logo for your petrochemical industry company that's destroying the planet. If they don't know what you're doing, they're just, they're giving you a logo. That's a kind of one-to-one exchange. But if you invite them to think about the risk or the context or the future world that company is going to operate in, they're going to give you a much deeper, nuanced approach to that. And we have at the college a program called Design Matters, which functions as a NGO. We're only art and design college with an NGO status, and Design Matters students are really good at that type of thinking. We're also one of the few colleges that has a grant from the Lemelson Foundation on engineering for one planet, and that really looking at the lifetime outcome of a product, service, or system. And it's this is such a key issue. It's almost like a physics issue. With all the advanced technology that we're using, we're also creating all of these external negative outcomes. H prompt is 8 bottles of water or something like that. So knowing what those risks are in the future will help inform your brand identity, help inform customers that you're targeting something that's going to have long-term impact, and then investors that are savvy about these risks will be even more keen to give you money. And communicating that through design is easier than without.
Thank you. Well, we're over time, so I'll let you say any last thoughts that you have, or just whatever last imparting notes you'd like to share.
I suppose the two things are, one, don't be afraid of not knowing what design might do for your company, because it's hard to know. And then two is, a lot of this you can start on your own. Just like in the early days of website design, website development, people would take tutorials and they'd spin up their own HTML, CSS page. You can start learning these approaches. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to be an expert in them, but the more you understand what the role is and the case examples for that role, the better. And there's just great resources across the internet on that. And then classes, if you ever want to come to Art Center and enroll in an online program, we have that as well, at a lower cost than a degree program in person. It's probably not what folks are looking for, but we'd love to have you.
VSG's community we're avid learners, if nothing else, right? We're all just trying to, even just the Oceanside chat is just people coming together to share what we know, so we can learn a little bit more. So we might get some students signing up for classes. So I just want to say thank you, Robbie. We have not had this as a topic. We've talked a lot about, how to have an effective pitch deck and, elements of communication, but never really a breakdown on design and all of the different elements of how it is, chunked up in a startup, and how you should really be not overlooking the value of it and how important it is to your actual product and going to market. So thank you so much.
That's what I'm here for. I love doing this, and I love introducing people to this topic, because I think it really does make a huge difference in terms of your potential success. And we just want to see more better ideas and less bad ideas.
So it sounds to me like there's more to be discussed, and so I will definitely reach out back out to you next year so that we can get you on the calendar for our 2025 Oceanside chats.
Definitely. And Dave, if you're still there, thank you so much for introducing me to the community here, and for all that you do in Pasadena and beyond.
Well, great to have you, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere at the Raymond, maybe. So we'll catch you soon.
I'd love that. All righty. Take it easy, everybody.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Adios.